Hey, welcome everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Ecosystem Aces. I am excited to be joined this morning by Meredith Stowell. Meredith, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here and talk about all things ecosystem with you.
Yeah. Gosh, you have. Well, let me just introduce Meredith a little bit. Meredith is over 17 years, I think, with IBM. Previously with Cognos and a number of many roles, really interesting roles that bring you to where you are today at IBM. And Meredith leads the is vice president of ecosystems for IBM zSystems, which is as you probably may know that zSystems is a lot of open source, capabilities, and your background at IBM, bringing communities together, getting communities excited, ISV communities and developer communities, really puts you in a tremendous position to be able to rally the troops and build build communities around zSystems. So why don't let's start there. And Meredith, if you could just talk a little bit about talk about your personal journey, and then how what it is that you and your team are up to at IBM zSystems these days.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Meredith Stowell, I lead our IBM zSystems and Linux One ecosystem. So that includes working with our partners that build applications on top of our platform, the open source community, the overall community, truly building a vibrant, sustainable, diverse community to surround this amazing platform, and really bringing everybody together and including building skills and talent for the future. So it's interesting, I look back and I say, how in the world did I get to where I am today? Because I think if you had asked me in college where my career would land, I definitely would not have said a tech company leading partner programs and building a vibrant community for IBM zSystems and Linux One. I didn't even know what that was. I have zero tech background as far as like from an education perspective.
Yeah, your degree is in like international economics, I think.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
International finance and economics with a minor in international business diplomacy. Right. So who would have thought? But you know what? I look back and I was thinking about this question, and as I followed my passion, my interests through my career, it started out as a budget analyst, and then an internal auditor, and then sales operations. And it truly was in that sales operations and as an analyst, that I started to really fall in love with tech. And I fell in love with how technology can enable you to provide more value in your job. For example, how analytics technology can enable an analyst to truly provide data-based and database recommendations, actionable insights, versus focusing on how do I pull all of this to data? How do I get all this data together and then begin to analyze it? Technology truly helps you to do that analytics. That's how I then got into consulting with Cognos, which led me to IBM. And what I recognized is that I really love facilitating and creating collaborative relationships that then can create that true win-win-win scenario where you get that 1 + 1 = 3, 4, 5. So I look back and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I am actually using that minor in international business diplomacy.
Diplomacy for sure.
Right? But it's being used to build these business partnerships that then create so much more than what we would ever be as individual entities.
Well, that's yeah, and I mean, I love that because certainly IBM is a global, organization and company, and I'm sure a lot of your partners and ISVs and developers are literally around the world.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. They definitely are. In fact, that's one of the things I love about working with IBM, the International Business Machines, right? It truly is that bringing together the international community. And it's both down at a regional level, but also at a global level, because that's one thing when you're looking at partnerships, when you're working with whether it's the ISVs who are creating these applications, whether it's working with the SIs, because that's another community that I work with, is the global system integrators. It's not just about what are the partners that are building applications and building technologies on top of the platform, but then how are we deploying those and how are we helping our clients to implement those in the most modern way possible? And that's where we get into our SI global system integrator partnerships as well. And but every geo is unique, right? And so it's a mix of how can you bring a global program or global capabilities, but then localize those capabilities and really, which then brings you to even more ecosystems, right? So it's not just your global ecosystems, but then also bringing in some local ecosystem as well to address that.
Well, so gosh, so many directions to go. I mean, first of all, as we were getting ready, I know you just came back from London, so again, certainly, now we're traveling again, which is kind of nice, but really that reaching out to global communities, and I'd love to hear more. Tell me a little bit more about how this, because I know IBM has this sort of ecosystem of ecosystems approach.
Yes.
So maybe you could talk. What does that mean to IBM and to your role?
Yeah, yeah. I would say that it's interesting. There was a recent study that was done in IBM. That's another component of it, is we do a lot of research. We try to get a better understanding of what's going on from an outside in perspective. And there was a recent study that was done on the virtual enterprise, right? Especially coming out of the pandemic, how are companies transforming themselves to be these virtual enterprises? And one of the key components of that was that ecosystem was so important in creating that virtual enterprise.
Hmm.
Open platforms and ecosystems, they offer those new avenues for growth, for efficiency, for innovations. And they also found that partnerships are focusing on fewer, deeper ecosystem combinations to really build that growth agenda. So it's while yes, you'll have a very broad ecosystem, it's also how deep do those different relationships go to ensure that you're meeting all of those growth opportunities and capabilities. And it's really grounded in openness in technologies like hybrid cloud and that flexibility to accelerate these new business models. So if you look at that openness of the ecosystem, it enables you to increase the reach, the value creation, all of this potential, while ensuring that every entity that's a part of this is truly maximizing the business outcomes within that industry context. So, you can see industries and cross-industry platforms and ecosystems that are now providing solutions and standards that an individual organization on their own never could have, right? So it's truly at the ecosystem is at the heart of enhancing innovation, making new markets, creating new markets, and really enhancing capabilities. And that's where, from an IBM perspective, this ecosystem of ecosystem, it's not just about our own ecosystem, but how can we leverage the ecosystem of that partner and the ecosystem of that partner, right?
Right.
Really
Right.
drive innovation and truly leverage it as an engine for growth. Because as I mentioned, when you're looking at a global market, you can't do all of that on your own. No company can truly do that on its own. And with the disruption, with the speed of change and digital transformation, you got to move fast and you got to innovate fast to stay differentiated. And that's where these partnerships come in. And I would also include in that, it's not just about the vendor relationships, not just the vendor ecosystem. It's also ensuring that you're leveraging your clients as a part of that overall ecosystem. So
That's really interesting. So yeah, so your partners, their partners, but also your customers and their partners as well.
That's right.
So
That's right.
that's a lot to coordinate.
It is because
It
you
is.
think about it, and
Yeah.
I was having a great conversation with a CIO recently at a financial services institution, and they were talking about when you bring when you bring these partners and these vendors together, and maybe you have one that focuses on one area of the application. Maybe there's somebody else that's focusing in on the infrastructure. Maybe there's somebody else that's focusing in on the networking. Maybe there's somebody else that's focusing on the services.
Right.
Um, what happens when you have a problem? Because you're going to have a problem, right?
Hmm.
Something's going to pop up. And everyone has to be focused on working together, the collaboration together, to be able to solve that as quickly as possible for that client with the client first attitude, right? And that to me is what real partnership is all about. It's not about
Hmm.
just going out and selling together, right? Which we can get into a little bit around how do we co-sell, right?
So yeah.
Um, but it's not just enough to get the win, right? The win doesn't matter if you can't get it implemented and if you can't then partner together as that ecosystem of ecosystems to really deliver and continue to deliver the success that that
Hmm.
needs.
Hmm.
So it is imperative that you're working together surrounding that client as that ecosystem of ecosystems.
Yeah. Well, and what you said earlier is it's so true that no one company can do it all, and you really need to, build these ecosystems of trust relationships and being able to work together and building that experience to deliver to co-sell, but then also deliver and make sure that everything's up and running. And I think zSystems, you guys are running some critical banking and insurance and airline systems, massive mission critical systems.
You got it. You got it. I mean, for decades, when you think about IBM zSystems, it's all around reliability, scalability, um, security, uh, ensuring that these mission critical applications don't go down, right? Because we're talking about um, credit card transactions, we're talking
Mm.
about banking, your ATM, the global economy is running on these systems. And so ensuring that they're always up is incredibly important. So I would say, for decades, right, key industries have really turned to IBM zSystems to manage transactions and store customer data. And we partner with some of the largest banking, insurance, public sector, healthcare institutions, right? So, in fact, it includes about 2/3 of the Fortune 100 that are
Mm.
running on this system.
Wow.
And here's an interesting one: an estimated 70% of global transaction value runs on IBM zSystems, and it's
That's
tremendous.
incredible.
It's
Yeah.
incredible. And we continue to see growth. We've just seen, within the past decade, we've seen over 3 times growth in our installed capacity in this platform. And in fact, we just announced the world's smallest mainframe. Really brings all of that scale that we're used to seeing, and it's all in the smallest footprint. In fact, so we have rack mount systems and single frame system configurations. They're really designed to save energy, save space, because sustainability is such a high priority right now with a lot of businesses. Our Linux One Rockhopper, we have different configurations, and we have seen this deliver a savings of 75% and can reduce data center space needed by 67%.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
that's where this not only are we addressing kind of the sustainability challenges that are out there right now, but we're also leveraging this to create even more business opportunity for our partners, right? And how can you reach new and expanded audiences with this new technology? But you'd mentioned, I was in London earlier, and we had an event this week all around sustainability. because it is and has been identified by CEOs as the top priority over the next, and the top challenge over the next years. How are we going to meet these sustainability goals, the regulations? There's over 2,500 regulations out there right now around sustainability. So how are they going to meet those? And definitely IT is at the heart of that. And leveraging the most that you can out of your systems and out of your infrastructure to help drive that is really going to make a difference. So, and also at that event, this is where I think it's so important from an ecosystem perspective. It's really about working together to showcase how it's not just about IBM bringing sustainability and helping to bring these innovations to market. They don't matter if you don't have the applications running on them, if you don't have that ecosystem surrounding them. And so it's always great when you go into these events and you have all of your ecosystem with you, right? So we actually had a number of our partners there with us on stage and through our panel discussions, really talking about how we work together to help drive that solution to our clients.
That's awesome. So, so software partners, system integrator partners as well, and yeah.
Yep. And service, it could be managed services partners
Managed
as well,
services, yeah.
right? Yeah. So let's say, for example, this event that we had FEP, Postgres. We had Clarify, who actually delivers on fraud and analytics, because we do have a specialized chip within our Z16 and within our current Linux 1 that actually accelerates AI inferencing. It's the first of its kind to truly enable scoring, 100% scoring on all transactions. So for example, with fraud or any other types of scoring that needs to be done. So a lot of the analytics ecosystem is really looking at this platform and how can they leverage it, because a lot of the data gravity, if you will, is also on the system, so that you can combine that AI at the time of transaction in real time, but within milliseconds.
Wow.
So
that's tremendous. That's yeah, incredible. So how do you when you're working with partners, I mean, that certainly on stage when you're talking about critical issues like sustainability, how about in the field when you and your sales leaders and sales teams are working together with partners? Talk a little bit about the process of planning and looking forward, then doing account planning, and how does that all work with you and your partners?
Yeah, it's very important to be intentional, right, when working with your partners and working with the ecosystem. Since we have a platform, a lot of our partnerships from an ISV perspective or from an open source community perspective, integration motion, right? So it's how do they integrate their applications and certify their applications to run on our platform, optimize their applications for those platforms. So then, but the most important thing is it's not about just getting them on the platform and saying, okay, hey, they're now supported, they're certified. All right, good luck. You really have to have, the secret is you've got to have that go to market and the routes to market coordination between the two of you, right? From a co-sell perspective. So, and in order to do that and ensure that you're not getting potential, channel conflict out there, or conflict once you don't want to show up at the client all of a sudden for the first time they're together. It's best to leverage. There are going to be opportunities that a partner is going to bring. There's going to be opportunities that we IBM bring, but then how do we coordinate that to truly go in as a single offering or a single opportunity or a single solution to our clients? And the only way that you're going to do that is through intentional account planning and ensuring, and that takes a lot of trust, right? Because it's going to be oh, you show me your opportunities. No, you show me your opportunities.
Right.
No, you show me your opportunities. Right. So it's going to take baby steps to build that trust. And there are going to be obvious opportunities that you both see, right, in the market, and then saying, okay, how are we going to go to this? How are we going to go to this client together? And working through that. And then they're going to be, the other thing is transparency. In fact, I just had this conversation with one of our partners of being very clear. Hey, you know what? In this swim lane here, we're going to go together.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's this type of opportunity, we're not going to go together.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to have that co-opetition, if you will, right? It's here, we're not going to go together, but here, this is fantastic. It's going to be a win-win for everyone. So having that open communication, starting small, don't try to boil the ocean, right? And maybe even to the point of, we actually do it on a geo by geo basis, right? So really working for each geography, it could be that within one geography, we focus on these partners and these capabilities and these opportunities, right? Whereas in another market, it's going to be something different because of the way of how that market is and the dynamics within that market, and where they are from a maturity level, right, of what they're doing from a business perspective. So it's important to ensure that you've got a broad partner base, as I mentioned, kind of that diverse, that sustainable, that vibrant ecosystem, but to provide flexibility and choice to your clients.
Mm-hmm.
Also then define, how are we going to go to market with this? What is the business value? Because that's the other piece, right? You have to have a differentiated business value. It's not just, hey, once again, this application runs on this, so okay, please buy us. No, you've got to have a differentiated value proposition. And developing that up front is very important so that you're going with a very clear value to your client, and then you're able to deliver on that value. Because that's the other piece that with the account planning is, yes, you're going to plan, and then, but it doesn't end when you win. It's got to go beyond that to the implementation and ensuring overall success for that client, because then that's going to create your marquee account. It's going to create your references, and you're going to go and be able to do that more and more.
And replicate it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then not even just to the market, but to your sales team, your partner sales team, like get them excited about it.
And so that brings in even another angle of this, right? Is because we are very partner friendly, if you will, right? We do really leverage our ecosystem for growth. You got the SIs, right? You could have an ISV that you're working with. You've got the infrastructure component. But then from a sell, you also have your resellers, right? And your channel partners. So being able to pull them in to the mix as well, and as a part of that account planning, and ensuring that you have that a true sales channel that you can go through. It may be direct or it may not. Once again, it's going to depend on the market. It's going to depend on the clients that you're going after. It's going to depend on a lot of different things, but you have to have that flexibility. And once again, be intentional about planning, because it's not just going to organically happen.
Do you have an example of a partnership where you've sort of gone through that process and kind of to make it tangible? I don't know if you can mention names or not, but
actually, you know what? I'll call one out. I'm going to call out Amrit, because we have an upcoming, Temenos is going to be having one of their large conference coming up, and Amrit is actually going to be on stage with me, talking about their success with Temenos on Linux One, right? But it's talking about it in front of other all of the different clients and all of the different individuals that will be there at the conference.
Yeah,
another thing, right? Once again, it's about that joint marketing and going out there and showing, hey, we've got a joint solution and we've had success. So yeah, that's an example of one. And then once again, like I said, it's not just about the fact that we got the win. We were able to work together to get it successfully implemented. We were able to get a happy customer who's now willing to come on stage and talk about their journey and really working with both of us. But that was a co-sell motion that led to Amrit implementing Temenos on top of Linux One.
Wow, that's awesome. What was the process what was the timing of that whole process?
It's not fast.
Yeah.
And I'll say this because we work, as you mentioned, zSystems and Linux One, we work within mission critical applications, right?
Yeah,
so in this case, it's core banking. And when you're looking at implementing a core banking application or shifting to a different core banking application, optimizing our existing or creating a new digital bank, it's going to be a longer cycle. And that's why you have to be so close with one another, right? And be willing to stay there and work through this process, because it's going to take anywhere from a year to 2 years to go through the sales cycle and then to go through the implementation, right? So,
I'm sure. I mean, gosh, just think of the change management and all of the security requirements, and you can't make a mistake when you're rolling it out, right?
no, you can't. And you have to ensure that you're doing it's all along the way, because when if you look at so we have what we call our IBM Z and Linux One partner network. Okay, it's a digital path. It enables partners who are ISVs that are interested in certifying on the platform to come in all digitally. They'll get a success coach assigned to them kind of behind the scenes. They go in, they get system access, they get learning to start, then to actually go and port their applications, to then certify the application. And then once it's certified, we then work together on our first win. And once you get into, if they're large applications that we're doing, such as the core banking, you're going to also need to do benchmarking, right? And performance testing. And so you have to do that on top of, it's not just about the certification, but then how do you optimize, right? And ensure that application is running at optimal levels and throughput, because once again, when we're talking about core banking or we're talking about mission critical, we're usually talking about millions of transactions coming through with very tight SLAs that only have milliseconds to get that transaction through. You think about it. Okay, think about when you swipe your credit card, right? Or you tap your credit card. I'm a tapper. When I go into wherever I'm purchasing something and I tap that credit card from a payments perspective, I'm not going to sit around and wait for that to come back.
Right.
It better get that little approved thing really fast, because if it doesn't, I'm going to say cancel, and I'm going to pull out a different card, right? Which means that business was just lost on this card.
Yeah.
That's the amount of time that you have where that goes back all through the system and comes back, validates it. Oh, by the way, it also does fraud calculations right within that, some AI and the scoring, all of that, to then come back and say, yep, you're good to go. You can purchase this.
Yeah.
So that's the timing that we're because it's hard to, when we talk about milliseconds, you're like, okay, millisecond, milliseconds really small.
So how does the community factor into all of this? Because you've had such a rich background in working with communities of ISVs and developers, and how does that all fit into the strategy?
Yeah, I would say that the community is absolutely essential. Right? It is essential, not only for the practitioners, right, and for the developers, but also just to showcase that you've got this sustainable community, the vibrant community. Things are changing so fast, right? Constantly, there's new technology that's coming out, new capabilities, and if you don't have a community that you can go to, that you can get the message out as quickly as possible to that community, but more importantly, give them an opportunity to give back to the rest of the community, give them the opportunity to network with each other and learn from each other, give them the opportunity to teach you something new, right? That outside in, to get their we call it client sponsoring, right? So where we need those sponsors before we do any development. And it's at the heart of how we develop our hardware and how we develop our software, is really getting that feedback from our clients, because we don't want to build it and hope that they come, but
Right.
because we know that this is something that they're looking for, right?
It's valuable to them, and then they're sort of bought into it as well.
And then it's just going to naturally grow, because when IBM says something, it's one thing, but when somebody else says something about your product or about you as from an experience perspective, it's completely different. And that's how you get that flywheel, because you're not going to get the flywheel without your community.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Gosh, Meredith, this has been fantastic. I appreciate you sharing so many insights. Maybe just one more question before we close. Any advice that you would have, sort of throughout your career, starting in international economics and then into communities and open source and sustainability and all those things, working with partners and working with an ecosystem, building an ecosystem? Any words of wisdom that you've shared a lot already, but just anything that's just sort of that comes to mind?
Yeah, I would say what I think is one of the key things in building partnerships is understanding where everybody's coming from and how do you get to a yes. Because when you first come and you start talking with a partner, you may think this is how this is going to turn out, and they may be thinking this is how this is going to turn out. And if you're open to getting to the yes, it may not necessarily be what you originally thought the yes was going to be, and it may not necessarily be the yes that the partner thought it was going to be, but it's probably something that's even better, right, than either one of you imagined. So really, how do you get to the yes? Be willing to get to that yes and have an open mind to create that 1 + 1 + 1 = 5 and work together, because there is a way to get to the yes.
I love that. And it sort of comes back on the conversation just a minute ago about communities, that you and this whole conversation, right? No one company knows everything. You may have a perspective about what you think is the right yes, but then you bring in other points of view, and it's like, oh well, that's interesting, we didn't think of that, let's adjust this a little bit, and it's better.
It's even better, and you realize, you're like, wow, I would have never even thought of that if I hadn't been open-minded. Right? If I hadn't gone in with positive intent from my part, and knowing that the others were coming in with a positive intent as well to get to that joint yes.
That's awesome. Meredith, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. What a great session, and really appreciate all of your experience and guidance and ideas, and some of it's tremendous, the work that you and your team are doing at IBM, and bringing so many ecosystem partners together to for the benefit of customers. It's fantastic.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Meredith. And with that, I think we'll sign off. And thanks everyone for joining another episode of Ecosystem Aces. I'm Chip Rodgers, and for Meredith Stowell, thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.